James Gunn has only gone and done it again and has created a brilliantly hilarious and action-packed superhero movie which we need to talk about right now. Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel Lifestyle Critic. I hope you're doing well. In this video we are going to be talking about the Suicide Squad. Now I was so lucky to be able to be invited to the Suicide Squad global premiere and got to watch it last night, and I can just say it's absolutely awesome. Super fun, super funny, super ultra violent, and really shocking. It's got some truly shocking moments in there, all the while not taking itself too seriously at all, which is just super refreshing for the DC Extended Universe. Now the big question is this movie a sequel or is this movie a reboot? Now it's not a sequel in the sense of it doesn't necessarily continue the exact same characters and the exact same plot narrative and the exact same way of telling that story. Also, it's not really a reboot either, as there are some returning characters and some overarching plot narratives being continued as well. I would say it's a bit of a new way of interpreting the Suicide Squad, as from a cinematography point of view and from a tonal point of view, it definitely feels like a very different movie to what Aya did in the first film. On that point, this movie definitely has James Gunn's fingerprints all over it. Is definitely his very distinct style, and as a result it's just such a fun ride from start to finish. It's just such a brilliant movie and I cannot wait to break it down for you in this movie review. So the premise of this movie is very similar to what you've heard and seen before, namely villains who are in prison can get time off their sentence by joining a group called Task Force X, whereby they have to go on suicide missions for the government, and if they don't comply with them then the government will kill them off. Now on this particular mission they have to go to the island of Corto Maltese and have to destroy a building known as Jotunheim, which is effectively a prison that houses a very big deadly alien called Starro, and Starro is able to shoot out millions of little stars, and if one of those little stars land on you, by the way they look a little bit like this, then the alien is able to control that person and they effectively stop living, and the alien is then able to control them for the rest of their life. So the stakes are very high in this movie. Now from a positive point of view, this film is absolutely brilliant as it never gets boring at all. There is always something going on, whether it's a big action sequence, whether it's a lot of humor-based sequence, or if it's just developing the plot forwards. It's just so brilliant as every single scene is used really well, and because it's got an aesthetic of it not taking itself too seriously, it's really enjoyable as well. Also, Starro is such a suitable and brilliant villain for the Suicide Squad. As you know, with the Enchantress in the first film, she didn't really work as she was such a magical creature. She wasn't really suitable for the Suicide Squad, whereas this time with Starro, not only is he very funny as a villain, as there are a lot of comedy moments with this character, it also does feel very end of the worldy, and because he's so lethal, it's very action based as well, so he's definitely leaning into the abilities of the Suicide Squad. And as Starro is just so lethal, he definitely instills a lot of fear in all of the different characters as well, which is absolutely brilliant for this movie. Also, this movie is able to boast loads of twists and turns happening in this film. You really don't know what's going to happen from one scene to the next, and it has some truly shocking moments, especially in the final act of this movie, which is really great. And also it's just got tons of violence and gore. It's got a 2-hour runtime and it's able to pack in loads of violence in this movie, which is absolutely unbelievable. And also the clue is in the title as well, so it's really interesting to see which characters are going to survive by the end of this film and which ones unfortunately are going to not survive. And also it's just refreshingly unapologetic, both in terms of its distinctiveness and in its execution as well. And you can really feel that this is James Gunn's interpretation of what the Suicide Squad should be, which is absolutely brilliant. And like I said before as well, it's really unpredictable, which is absolutely brilliant, as you quite literally do not know what's going to happen from one scene to the next, which is absolutely wicked, as it quite literally has you on the edge of your seat, just waiting and in shock to see what's going to happen next. Now I was thinking quite hard about what are the negatives in this movie, and if you've seen my other reviews then you'll know the negatives definitely do come quite quick in these reviews. However, with this film it was surprisingly quite difficult to find some negatives. I mean, I guess you could say it could take itself a little bit more seriously, but you know, it's purposefully trying not to take itself too seriously. Also, it could be doing a bit more DCEU building. At the same time, you know, it does do a little bit. You can see some characters being peppered in here from the wider DCEU, but also it does a really good job in terms of balancing new characters and well-known characters really, really well in this movie. You know, I guess you could also say it could have more individual moments as well as more ensemble moments. And yes, fair enough, sure, it could do that, but also I feel like it does do that enough for certain ensemble moments to be really, really great, and also some single solo character moments to be really, really great as well. I would also say that this movie definitely has got a lot of violence and gore, like I said before, so if you are a bit squeamish, then definitely go into this movie knowing that it has got very horror-esque type violence. But you know, all in all, from a storyline point of view, the Suicide Squad is actually pretty almost perfect. So the Suicide Squad honestly has got some brilliant casting, and everybody is bringing something to the table, which is absolutely brilliant. So for example, some characters are just bringing brute strength, some characters are really bringing the humor, some characters are bringing the action sequences, and some characters are just bringing the comedy value, and all of them just work together as an ensemble really, really well. On that point, like I said before, you know, they have definitely pulled the lesser known characters from the DC Extended Universe and definitely put them in the forefront, which is absolutely great. You know, there is still some peppered moments from the well-known characters. So for example, the Superman character is mentioned in the beginning, and of course we have Harley Quinn in here as well, but they've just done such a good job in terms of meshing all of these characters together. And like I said, the lesser known characters are actually really likable and you can really connect with them, which is a true testament to the writing and the direction taken in this movie. So let's go through all of the cast members and the characters one by one. So of course, first up we have Margot Robbie as the Harley Quinn character, and this is definitely a new take on this character. I mean, certain moments in this film can make it feel like a bit of a boysy film, but you know, that being said, then suddenly Harley Quinn will come in and just totally boss the film, and she will just be such a scene stealer and just own the moments that she's in as well. And you know, she also works really well from an ensemble point of view. In the beginning, when I first saw this character, I just thought, okay, she's just going to be another team member like she was in the first Suicide Squad movie and in the Birds of Prey movie as well. But then she has some brilliant, mind-blowing solo action sequences which she just totally owns in her own unique, distinct style, which is really, really great. And finally, she actually looks a lot more similar to how she is depicted in the animation series and in the comics as well. Next up we have Idris Elba, who is introduced in this movie as a brand new character called Bloodsport. Now, there were reports that Will Smith was going to reprise his role from the first movie as Deadshot, but unfortunately Will Smith was really busy, so he couldn't sign on to this movie. They were then questioning whether or not they want to recast the role of Deadshot with Idris Elba now playing that role, but James Gunn decided actually they want to introduce a new character who is Bloodsport, which will also allow Will Smith to come back as Deadshot if he ever so wishes in the future. Now, as far as Bloodsport is concerned, he is the leader of the Suicide Squad, and he is just bringing so much brilliant action sequences, so much humor, and actually really heartfelt moments from this character. So Idris Elba definitely owns this character really, really well. And also the Bloodsport character just boasts some absolutely awesome gadgets, weapons, and costumes. So Idris Elba really does own the role as Bloodsport. Next up we have Peacemaker, who is played by John Cena, and honestly he just does an excellent job in this movie. His comedy timing is just absolutely brilliant. The sequences with Peacemaker are just super, super funny, really, really hilarious, really, really witty as well. And also because John Cena is a brilliant wrestler, he is just able to totally own all of the action sequences with ease, and they just look absolutely wicked. As far as the actual character of Peacemaker goes, you know, he's a bit of a villain-esque version of Captain America. Now, we have seen a villain-esque version of Captain America being done quite a few times. For example, in The Boys, we've got Highlander, who is very much an evil version of that type of character. We also have Soldier Boy, who is going to be played by Jensen Ackles very soon, being a bit of a spin on Captain America as well. We also had US Agent being a bit of an anti-hero slash villain in Falcon and the Winter Soldier as well. And also we had Omni-Man, who was a really unexpected, subverting your expectations type character in the Invincible TV series. So we've seen quite a lot of characters that are supposed to be heroic, but are actually a bit twisted being done. But you know, Peacemaker definitely brings his own spin on this character as well. Next up we have Joel Kinnaman, who is returning as Rick Flagg. And actually this character is very, very different to how you remember him in the first movie. I mean, he is so much less serious, he doesn't really have a chip on his shoulder, and actually he is a lot cooler and a lot funnier and just blends in with the ensemble so well. I mean, Joel Kinnaman is a really, really great actor, and you can just tell that he is absolutely loving playing this new version of the Rick Flagg character, which is absolutely brilliant. Next up we have Sylvester Stallone, who is lending his voice to the King Shark character. Now, I wasn't sure what to expect from this character in the beginning, but actually he was a really great character, and actually surprisingly, there are some emotive scenes with this character as well. Of course, there are some great action sequences and some humor-based sequences, but this character especially will definitely surprise you in this movie. Next up we have Viola Davis, who is back as Amalda Waller. Definitely a very similar type of character from the first movie in terms of being extremely ruthless and very no-nonsense as well, and this is definitely dialed up a lot more in this movie. Next up we have Peter Capaldi, who is here as the Thinker. Now, this character is great, and obviously Peter Capaldi definitely brings a lot to the role. I just wish we would have seen a lot more from him, as he is such a great super villain in the animation series and in the comic books. And you do see some twisted stuff from this character. They just definitely could have done a little bit more of it. And then finally, like I said before as well, we have Starro, who is the main super villain in this movie. And at points, he does seem pretty unstoppable and like he's going to destroy the entire world, with all of his mini stars just basically taking over all of the humans. And it did feel very hopeless in quite a few number of scenes towards the end of this movie, but it's really great villain, like I said before, for the Suicide Squad, which is absolutely great. And so from a cast and characters point of view overall too, this movie is actually pretty brilliant. As I'm sure you can imagine, the visuals in The Suicide Squad by James Gunn is absolutely excellent. This movie honestly has tons of explosive sequences. The violence and the gore is just on another level, and as such is just very larger than life. And surprisingly, some of the action sequences are really gritty. It definitely feels like it's made for the cinema. I feel like if you're going to watch this movie, watching it in the cinema is just going to give it a totally different experience. And the musical score especially just adds a lot more intensity and a lot more humor and dynamism to certain scenes. And like I said before, there are certain moments that are really shocking in this film as well. And also it just has such a fun aesthetic, and it has an action sequence pretty much, it feels, every 15 minutes. So it definitely keeps you on your toes, is very enjoyable, and it definitely has James Gunn's blueprint and his distinctive style all over this movie. So you definitely feel like you're watching a James Gunn film, which is absolutely brilliant from a visuals point of view. So the big question in terms of comparisons, how does The Suicide Squad compare to the original cut from Aya? Now, I would say obviously this movie is 10 times better than that movie, but you know, this is coming from somebody who did actually really enjoy the first Suicide Squad movie. By the way, I'll link my review in the description box below, but you know, it is a bit of a new take, a brand new interpretation as well on that movie, while still retaining the same concept. So it still feels like a Suicide Squad movie, it's just a very different way of telling that story as well. I would say also from the DCEU world of movies, I'd put this movie on the same level as Shazam, as that movie is also a bit of a refreshing new take for the DCEU, and is also just a brilliant movie in and of itself. I wouldn't say this movie is as brilliant as the Snyder Cut, which was just in another league of its own. But you know, that being said, I would say that this film also has got a bit of a Zack Snyder and Deborah Snyder vibe to it, especially in how it transitions from one storyline beat to the other, how it splits all of its different storytelling. It definitely feels very reminiscent to how Zack Snyder did that in the Snyder Cut. But you know, that being said, from a comparison point of view, I definitely feel like this is one of the best movies to come out of the DCEU. But even outside of that, I just think it's a brilliant movie in and of itself as well. So overall, I have to say The Suicide Squad is just a brilliant movie, such an enjoyable experience to watch this movie in the cinema. And you know, it's just such a fun film. It definitely packs an almighty punch in the movie, and you can definitely tell as well. I mean, James Gunn has said in interviews that he only signed onto this movie provided he would not be restricted by anything that went in the past. And you can just really tell that, you know, James Gunn just had a clear canvas when he was creating this movie and just really wanted to do whatever he wanted to do. And it just comes across on screen so well, and is just so brilliant in its unpredictability, as well as all of the storyline aspects, all of the characters, all of the humor, all of the action sequences, and just how it ties everything together. And the villain as well is just absolutely brilliant. And so, you know, it has got 98% on Rotten Tomatoes for a reason, because it just blends everything together and just tells a narrative so well. And so for all of those reasons, it has to get a massive 8.5 from me. And I'm now also just really excited and intrigued to see what the future of the DCEU is going to look like. You know, there was a time when Marvel were just absolutely smashing it out of the park, and the DCEU somewhat was going downhill. But you know, we've got the Flash movie to look forward to, and a whole host of exciting movies, I'm sure, from the DCEU coming soon. But you know, I'd love to hear what you think, so please let me know in the comment section below. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you in my next video.